What looks really impressive, but it's relatively easy to do / learn. Learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Throwing things in the air and catching them before they fall. I do it with my pens, water bottles, etc. It's pretty easy. Things slow down a bit before they fall. That's when you try to catch it. Try it with a box cutter. Really fun and challenging. And yes, you will have a few scars, but who cares? The cutting edge of talent, no less. I do that constantly, and it drives my wife crazy. Lol. Also, can you throw and catch stuff with closed eyes? Took me a long time, but it's so rewarding. Hey, I never tried it. Thanks, I'm gonna throw the whole house in the air while with my eyes closed now. Use Microsoft Excel. Seriously, once you get past the basics, everyone in the office thinks you're a data master or something. At a previous job, I was the Excel genius because I could fix any issues. I just googled the issue every time, and our spreadsheets were pretty simple. This is so true. I was some kind of super genius in an office where everyone used Excel, but I was the only one who thought to use Google when I was stumped. Google is only useful for shopping, finding pictures and looking up songs apparently. This can backfire. I was my team's Excel guru until the datasheets got too big for Excel to handle. Then I was forced to learn MISC over a 2-week period, which was absolutely brutal. Always fly under the radar, grasshopper. Never too close to the sun. Building your own computer. There are a ton of people on the internet who will basically do all the research for you, and the bits of the build process that aren't immediately obvious, most of the pieces only fit in one place, will be in whatever 10-minute YouTube tutorial you can find. The most difficult part of the assembly is the cable management in the case, which says a lot, since that is still easy. I'd say the most difficult part is knowing what components to buy, but sites like PartPy can make that greatly easier too. I found it hardest to be 100% sure I was hitting the sweet spot with each component. There is almost always a more powerful option, but whether you should buy it for a particular budget or performance aim is always a bit of a gray area. Building the thing was a breeze. I found the software setup side of things more difficult than the hardware. Guitar. Seriously. Just learn like 5 to 6 of the most basic chords, GADCE, and you can probably play the melody to like any song. I would disagree. The guitar is not an easy instrument. To learn, point the strings hurt people's fingers and butts when they are trying to learn the correct left hand and right hand technique. Strumming is clumsy and difficult for people who have never played a stringed instrument before. Piano, however, is a much easier instrument to quickly learn. It's really just target practice. And once you learn some basic triads, you're off to the races. I second this. You can learn several songs in as little as 3 to 4 months of practice. Yeah, and good luck craving more skill the rest of your life. It's a never-ending pursuit. It is fun once you're so far into the rabbit hole. The dumbest stuff to you is the most mind-blowing thing a person has ever seen. If they don't play, I always get a kick out of people reacting when I do little tap runs. Light a match while holding matchbox in the same hand. Took me couple of minutes to learn via watching one YouTube video. Typing really fast on a keyboard. My speed is around 75 WPM and people look at me as if I'm some sort of born I.T genius. It literally took me 3 concentrated days to learn the ASDFGHJKL row, and after that the upper and lower got easy with time. Same. Had this cardboard thing to hide the letters. This was years ago. Typing zombies helped too. I haven't tested myself in a while, but it used to be around 70 WPM. Getting good grades, especially in college. For most people it's really just about getting some good habits and routines down, not about being a beautiful mind or whatever. Yes, so true. People who study like 5 hours a day and still gets low grades are quite rare. Most people with low grades just mess around and never puts the time in. Of course, getting high grades is a lot easier with an high IQ, but anyone with an average intelligence should be able to get top grades if they only put in the time. I wouldn't say it's always because they didn't put the time in. I know I had a lot of problem because I was smart enough that I wasn't really challenged in high school, so I never really developed good study skills. Luckily for me, I realized what the problem was and corrected it in college. which I guess could be considered putting the time in, but many don't realize that is what their problem is, and will study for hours and hours and not retain it because they never learn to study properly. Poaching an egg, using a butterfly knife, and fishing. Balisong's butterfly knives are fun if you can get the hang of a few tricks. Just beware of laws in your area. Many places ban sharpened balisongs, but trainers are pretty easy to obtain. Also something to note, if you are wanting to learn, and I would hope whoever or wherever you are learning from would mention this, but butterfly knives are generally one-sided. Just remember to hold the handle that is not on the cutting side, and even if it closes on your hand it won't cut you. Soft-boiled eggs are just as hard also. For some reason, making a quiche, they're super simple. You can put whatever you want in it, plus tons of leftovers. But for some reason people think you're super fancy when you make one. Sewing. Have you ever put together a jigsaw puzzle? Can you drive a car? Then you can sew your own clothes. Basic calculus. I'm not talking BS, just the most basic stuff even looks terrifying. For me at least, the derivative part of calculus was probably the easiest math I ever took. Rolling a coin across your knuckles. I learned it in a single afternoon when I was like 14 and never forgot how to do it since. It seems impressive and all, but once you get the momentum and practice for a bit it almost goes naturally. Yeah, this is the stuff I'm thinking about. X does this with poker chips. He does some other neat tricks as well, pretty cool. Brewing coffee. A good cup from a French press is easier than it looks, just a little calibration to make it work. The secret ingredient is spiders, isn't it? It's actually cinnamon. I mix it in the grounds before I pour in boiling water. Takes away any bitter taste. Singing a song in a foreign language. It's so easy. All you have to do is find one you think sounds really good, listen to it a lot, and sing along. It doesn't matter how much you butcher it the first few times, just try over and over until you have it right and can sing it from memory. It's not very hard. After posting this, I realized another part: you should probably listen to a few translations of the song to get an idea of the theme. Sewing and fixing your clothes. I haven't bought new clothes in a couple years because I either fixed it or tailored my own clothes from fabric. It's a hell of a lot cheaper to buy a couple yards of linen or tartan and a handful of buttons to have a nice shirt that is personally tailored, and not to mention easier than a lot of people realize. I was just about to say this. The sewing machine can be intimidating at first, but once you know how to work it, it's usually smooth sailing from there, with the exception of thread getting stuck and having to check the bobbin at the bottom sometimes. It's more annoying than difficult. The good thing is I can make a cute top that costs around $4 to make, which would usually be around $15 minus $25 at the store. Oh, absolutely. I tend to use a sewing machine for repairs to denim or leather, so I can get thick thread and a tight seam to prevent another tear or rip. I prefer to sew by hand personally for most things because I can be precise with it and tailor it as I go. To be fair though, I've been sewing since I was a kid in the cadets, and as you said, the sewing machine is a lot easier and isn't as difficult as hand sewing, so I'd recommend that people getting into it go with a sewing machine first for sure. Anything, if you're willing to put in the effort. Reading writing systems. Try learning how to pronounce Korean. It's surprisingly easy. Solving a Rubik's Cube fairly fast is actually quite easy, as long as you are willing to practice. Magic the Gathering. All the instructions are on the card. Same with Pokemon. Rules are right in a playing mat that comes with pre-built decks. Guitar is slow but easy. I've been playing for about 5 years and I can do shreddy and fast licks and riffs that people think are incredible and complicated, but are actually not super difficult and are usually fairly simple. There's a rhythm riff I wrote that I specifically tell people I like this cause it looks and sounds super impressive, but it ain't really that hard. Some people are just impressed by playing a song or writing your own. Anyone thinking about starting, I highly recommend it. It's really fun, and it's not as hard as you think. Knife flipping and twirling. Flipping, it's all in the wrist, but you also have to take thought in the position of your arm and the strength of your flip. It's quite easy once you get the hang of it. And twirling, it's all in the joints. You also have to keep the edge from your skin just enough that it doesn't cut you. It's very fun and a neat skill to impress your friends. What do you mean by flipping and twirling? Like how people flip coins between their fingers, or twirl a pencil. Card tricks. I got my now wife to start dating me with the devil's elevator trick. Took about 1 week to learn to do well. Sabering a bottle of sparkling wine. It's really not hard, even with a kitchen knife. Just don't do it with cheap bubbly, which often uses thin Chinese made glass bottles that will explode once you saber them. Just looked into it, and as long as you understand the physics it should be easy enough. Of course practice on a few first, in order to get it down, but it would be a very impressive party trick. Blacksmithing. Even with the most basic and simple setup, for instance hole in the ground plus rock for anvil, you can do a lot of things that are fun and everyone will think you're a beast. Good kitchen one is how to cook a frittata. Really simple to make, but looks great on a plate. Tricks with drumsticks. I can't count the number of times someone's been blown away by something I started trying 5 minutes ago. Knitting. There's a bit of a learning curve, and it takes some practice. But once you get the hang of it, it's so easy. People are super impressed, especially with cable knitting. And as a bonus, you make actually useful things. Crocheting too. I can do basic knitting and crocheting, and I sort of see it as tying a lot of knots. Using a butterfly knife. As long as you use the safe side and aren't an idiot, it's actually pretty difficult to hurt or cut yourself. And honestly it's pretty easy to learn, like 3 or 4 really impressive but low consequence and simple tricks in like a week or so once you have the basics. Baking. Follow the directions and make sure you chill before icing a cake. Not talking or using your smartphones in cinemas. Playing the opening to Thunderstruck, AC/DC. It's a lot easier than you think. On guitar. I mean, obviously, it's AC/DC, it's for dum-dums. Building a computer, it's legit putting expensive Legos together easy af. Making bread. I really wanted Turkish bread and hummus for dinner, but the shops were closed, so I found some dried yeast in the cupboard and used the simplest recipe I could Google. Turned out amazing. Now I have my own home fermented sourdough culture, and am really into baking. That sounds interesting. Can you share the recipe you used? Flying a plane, not landing or takeoff, that can be difficult. But the actual steering midair is pretty straightforward and easy, assuming the weather is nice and you're not getting tossed around. I used to think hibachi chefs were like those expert sushi chefs that spent years learning to wash rice, but it turns out you can become a qualified hibachi chef in 6 months. I also noticed that they pretty much always do the same tricks and cook simple dishes. Learning a programming language. Not as hard as you think. Rubik's Cube. I watched a 40-minute YouTube video with 20 minutes practice. Now I can solve one in 3 minutes, then one after few hours, and it always impresses my family cause they think that it's really hard to learn, even though I told them I learned it from a 40-minute YouTube video. The Rubik's Cube. Learned it in 6 days in elementary. Even rather basic origami gets people interested. Pro level poker. It's based on basic principles like raise when you can't quite call. Waking up before 9 AM on the weekends. Cracking and emptying an egg with one hand. Making creme brulee. It's made out to be this super fancy dessert, but it's just egg yolks, sugar, and cream mixed together, and eat it in the oven for a bit. Chill, then torch sugar on top and you're done. Solving a Rubik's Cube. As long as you don't give up after 3 days, it's pretty simple to do with the beginner's method. Fix work on cars. It's a lot easier than you think to change your oil or replace a wheel on your car. People always think it's such a big deal and take it to a shop where you're charged almost of $100 for something that would cost you a fraction of that to do yourself. Learning to play instruments. Don't get me wrong, they aren't really easy to learn, but I've been able to pick up a few different instruments without a lot trouble. The hardest part about it is staying dedicated to it and play every day. Braiding your own or other people's hair. I taught myself to French braid and then watched some videos on other types. The really tiny ones are more difficult, but a single French braid is easy. Balisong butterfly knife tricks. Repairing your own cell phone. The hardest part is not losing the screws. Guitar for the most part. Easy songs like Wheat Kings by the Tragically Hip Won't Back Down by Tom Petty and Wonderwall by Oasis are all easy songs, but people usually see them as impressive if they don't play guitar. Basic butterfly knife tricks, like the most simple of moves that don't even risk you getting cut, are enough to impress most people. Butterfly knife balisang flipping. Even though I'm not even close to the best, it is still pretty easy to learn to do some tricks. And if you are scared to cut your finger or they are illegal in your state, you can always use a training knife which has no blade. Music, specifically string and percussion instruments. It's harder to learn traditional sheet music, but learning to play an instrument is relatively easy. Most popular songs are made up of the same basic chords and the internet has plenty of resources for learning to play them. After listening to chords individually and in a rhythm, you can differentiate what is what by sound. Muscle memory is also a big part of it, but it comes with practice. Walking on your hands, super easy to learn. Climbing stairs and efficient turning are harder, but it's very easy to learn to walk straight. Programming, like if you are gonna praise me for my bad JavaScript skills. Don't do so, because I go on Scratch. Speaking fluent English, cooking, typing, cursive writing, ignoring people listening. I would say cooking. Basically you just have to follow the recipe and get the proper materials too. Also you just need a bit of patience and practice too. Using an Arduino. I'm constantly astonished by this, and then the people always tell me they did this thing in less than half an hour without any prior programming or electronics skills. Solving a Rubik's Cube. I don't know if you're considered to be a smart person anymore if you can do it, but I can tell you the only thing you need to have for solving it is very basic learning skills. It's kind of like learning to play a video game, and really not much intelligence is needed, just focusing. Singing or art. If you have a passion for it and practice, it's not difficult to learn, nor is it a special skill. Many people can sing well or make amazing art. I'm not saying this to belittle those who do make art or sing, because it's still amazing to see people with such talent. It just isn't as special as people make it seem.